Accepting the life you didn't plan. Always a boy. So, in this solo episode, as I mentioned in the intro, those of you who are watching the video, uh, because we are allowing this video to be broadcast on YouTube. I don't typically make the podcast videos public, but when I do my solo ones, maybe here or there I will, just so people can see my face and get to know more about the podcast. But, this topic that I want to explore for the month, I'll pop on here once a month, accepting the life you didn't plan, is one that I'm so passionate about. And I believe that it may also be one that really frustrates people. I think that a lot of people may really, really, especially after 40, go through this stage of um, wondering what the heck happened, um, or have I done all that I need to do? Um, or just lots of questions. And, I do think that obviously there's a fair amount of us who are moving through life totally, feeling on track or, feeling as though, well, whatever, I'm all right. But I think there's also a number of us who are over the age of 40, beyond 40, who may be thinking this is kind of challenging to accept some things that have come to be. And so I want to spend this time in today's solo episode offering you at least 5 things to consider. This is information. This isn't a coaching session. If you're wanting more specifics of how it relates to your life, I would love to talk to you. And that information, like I said, was provided in the intro. So if you're just watching the video, make sure you listen to the audio on the podcast platform so you can get more information about how to connect with me. But I really want to spend the time sharing a little bit of my own process of accepting a life that I didn't plan, and beyond accepting, actually thriving. And that's really so much of my goal in doing the podcast is beyond just finding kind of your sense of self, but actually learning how to get in a more thrive mode. That's to me, um, the beauty of this age is that responsibilities shift, lifestyle shift, and there's actually a lot of opportunity to thrive. But I think before we get to that, there's a lot of steps in between. It's a lot of steps. You don't just jump to it. There's a lot of steps in between. So I will start by saying this for myself, and it'll be a little anecdotal, and then I'll go into some 5 things I'd love for you to consider in this whole accepting a life you didn't plan. Um, I will say when I began to dream big, when I began to find all these things that I'm going to mention in a moment, when I began to put these dots in place, actually what started happening was things started superseding or surpassing my plans. Things that have happened in my life, I couldn't dream this big. I couldn't fathom this big. And I think when you begin to experience sitting down with your life, dreaming forward, having big dreams, big ones, and then watching how the universe actually surpasses that dream, something bigger happens than you really thought could happen, then you begin to say, oh, that's the abundant side of acceptance. And I believe we have to start building more of lifestyles that move in that trajectory so that we are not sitting maybe in a lifestyle and now just wanting to survive day to day. So I'll give you an example. There's really very little in my life that has happened according to plan. Seriously. There are things that have been similar. There are things that have happened that were on the pathway. But as far as having this really, elaborate plan, maybe some of it happened, but it didn't feel the way that I thought it was going to feel. And so then it becomes, well, what was the point of the plan, right? I don't want to I don't want you to think in listening to today's episode that we shouldn't plan, because I know sometimes people say the biggest, God will laugh at your plans. You hear that all the time. Um I but bump, there's a little bit of haha in that, and a little bit of truth probably in that. I do think though that that doesn't mean then just don't plan, right? Of course, no. You still, to me, planning is a part of this human journey and can really help us to feel a sense of security and have a sense of navigation and predictability, which I believe is a necessary part of a human journey. There is a soul journey happening though too, and I think this is why plans in life look very different depending on where the soul is attempting to make its journey. And I think that's a big part of what we have to begin to do to get in the acceptance, is better identify what's the soul journey. There's the human and then there's the soul journey. So I'll get more into that in a moment, but I think also we have to incorporate more dreaming and getting more creative with our sense of, you know, ideals, and not get caught up in fantasy island, right? But be willing to play, be willing to seek pleasure and joy in looking at that forecast ahead and not just plan according to practicalities. I think we have to be willing to diversify our plans. So let me give an example. I know, like many people, and those of you who are in your 20s, I appreciate you listening to this. If you are listening and you're just curious, or in your 30s, curious to hear more about going, and finding yourself after 40. I will say in my 20s, that was when my plans were probably the most strict, and I think that's common because we're not really taught to not do that, right? And and honestly, things were moving pretty much according to plan, pretty much according to what I, again, not so much was dreaming about, but was planning about. The issue started to become that the plans were not feeling for me what I thought they were going to feel like. I wasn't experiencing the joy or the relief or the quote unquote successful feelings that I thought I was going to fulfill, or that I was going to feel. Feel, feel. Instead, there was this weird kind of, I don't know, let down, or this kind of, well, I did this and now what? Or I did this and, you know? And so, um, I got married. I had planned that. I got a degree. I had planned that. I, said I wanted to major in something that would get me a job and career going, and physical therapy did that for me. And I got that job right after graduation. And I found that husband soon, a couple years after that. And we got that house and we had those children, and all of those things were happening according to plan, but I still wasn't accepting the life. So I actually wasn't accepting the life that I actually had planned. And the reason I wasn't was because I had planned a life that had nothing to do with really the core of me. Now, that's not to say my children, I've always wanted to have children. And, I love my boys, and, they're amazing. At the same time, and the experience of coming into motherhood was the most challenging experience of my life and continues to be what I consider my most challenging role. There is more ease because I have a different mindset about parenting, but it took really honestly until my children got in their teens and late teens before I really began to shift that mindset, which is one of the things I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But when I began to really fall apart, when I began to really recognize how depleted I was feeling, that is when I began to get curious differently and began to seek a different journey and a different plan. And I didn't even have a plan. Really, when I surrendered the idea of a plan, and had more of a dream, and the dream came from a space that I had never really allowed myself to fully dream in. That's when I began to be able to accept the life I didn't plan, because the dream planted the seed that allowed me to begin a journey that really, really surpassed things. So I could really talk about this subject for a really long time. And I want to really make sure I move to 5 things I would love for you to consider doing, and things that consider practicing in your life. So I'll just give this example of dreaming and the universe and higher source superseding, by far surpassing that dream. So when I got back into music, I was away from music for, over a decade plus. And I was, when I got back into doing it in my late 30s, and I was very, I was doing so many things, taking so many leaps of faith in the space of my creative self that I had not planned. Didn't really know what it was going to amount to, but knew something inside, had learned how to begin to really listen to soul and to intuition and follow it. And so when I first started, I lived in, a suburb of, Chicago, and very nearby was this, local restaurant. And I'll say the restaurant name to give them kudos, give them business because they're still around. Flavor Restaurant. And Flavor Restaurant, wasn't too far away from the place I was living at that time. And, I'd go, it's a really intimate, small restaurant. Like, I mean, it could probably house, I don't know, 30 patrons. I don't know, maybe less, maybe more, but it just was really, it's one of those really, really nichey small places at the time. They have hit now expanded, but at the time they were small, and they would do live music there on the weekends. And so at the time I would go, to have dinner with family, or, date nights, or with friends, and would hear the live musicians, and, would enjoy the music. But at the same time, at that point, when I wasn't really doing my music, there was a weird resentment. There was a weird, like, I can do that. I should be doing that. Why aren't I doing that? And that would just always circle my head. And so when I started getting back in my music, my plan, my goal was, and really beyond plan, my goal, like the epitome, was if I got enough courage and enough whatever to perform at Flavor, I would arrive. I would have arrived. This would be it. Like, this is all I want. All I want is to be able to just go down the street to this restaurant and perform. That is my dream, right? So long story short, once I got moving into music, I finally got the courage up when I had recorded my first EP, so my short album. And, I was, trying to get it out, passing it out here or there, letting my friends, family, and praying somebody, a stranger somewhere, would listen to it. But started to really realize that, wait a minute, you know what? This may be the time that Flavor is the gig. This may be it. This would be my first real regular gig if I could get this. And so I literally went inside the restaurant with my CD in hand, and the manager of the restaurant happened to be there. I talked to, like, the hostess, like, can I just leave this CD? I'm an artist. And I don't know, maybe if whoever books, the artist to perform, if they can consider. And the person was like, oh, well, the manager does that and she's here. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. And so I meet with the manager. She's super gracious and warm. And she, like, sees the CD and then like, okay, I'm gonna check it out, and we'll see. Right. And that was that. And so I left and I was like, okay, we'll see. And literally, she contacted me. I want to say she might have called me or emailed me. It was some kind of contact that day or the very next day. It was very soon after I dropped off the CD. And she said, I think you'll be perfect to perform at Flavor. And she said, I really rarely have vocalists because vocalists tend to scream and yell and they're too loud and people can't really enjoy their food. But I'm listening to your voice and it's so soothing and calming and soft. And it's so funny. And this, I always tell artists this, listen, especially Black female artists, where I believe sometimes we believe that in order to be a real singer, we gotta belt it out and we gotta be Aretha and we gotta be Shaka and which no disrespect, they are amazing. Or we gotta be able to do all these, riffs and, all these things that, flips and cartwheels with our voices. But the thing that got me this first gig, which was a very pivotal moment in my music career, was in fact the fact that I didn't do all of those things. That in fact I stay true what my voice is energetically wired and talented to do, which is to pretty much stay in tone. And yes, I may have a softer soprano voice. Anyway, that's what got me the gig. And so I get this gig that paid, really, I wasn't even going to be able to pay myself by time I got the musicians on board. But that was the plan and the goal and the dream. But let me tell you what, that was only the beginning. In fact, it was the beginning of so many things, not just of future gigs, but of the beginning of me gaining confidence, the beginning of me feeling really certain and clear that music was something, in fact, that season I needed to be about. It was me coming to an acceptance of a life that I didn't plan, but that a life that potentially was going to reward me with way more than I could even see. And so I share this story, one, to give an example of why I think it's so critical to find our voice after 40. And mind you, yes, when I got this gig, I was 40. I was approaching 40. I think I was maybe 39. But I was definitely, it set me up for my 40s of doing music. And so while that is a positive, and sometimes we have negative things that happen in our lives that become even harder to accept, it's still the same premise of what is life, what is soul journey attempting to teach us? Where is it attempting to line us up for? It's typically attempting to line us up for a bigger, better, more thriving and evolving area. But our mindset has to follow that. And we have to begin to understand and reframe our mindset so that it creates room to have that acceptance. I didn't plan to be divorced after 21 years of marriage. I had feelings of concern and doubts, but there was many points where it's like, no, I'm staying married forever. There were points where it's like, I'm leaving tomorrow. And there were points like, I'm staying forever. I never planned to see and have to deal with a parent with dementia and Alzheimer's and watch him become nothing of himself. Didn't plan that life of having to navigate that. There are many, and I could go on and on of those things that maybe were not the bright rainbow light. At the same time, where my acceptance came in was the point at which I was building a lifestyle, dreaming a lifestyle, building a lifestyle, and moving through a lifestyle of one that was of abundance. And I think we have to begin to, one, start where we are. And if that means letting pieces fall completely apart, letting them fall apart so that you can reframe, reset, and so that this new life that's attempting to emerge will allow you more room of acceptance. And so I want you to consider these 5 things to go through the process of this, of accepting the life you didn't plan. 1, get support. Get support. I do believe that those of us, particularly 50 plus, but I would still say 40 plus, those of us who are from cultures and backgrounds of indigenous spaces and brown and black spaces where there's very, very few historical curated spaces for us to be safe in getting help from strangers. It's challenging to do this, but I implore you to get some level of professional support. The family support, continue it. The friend support, absolutely. The community support, yes. The professional support, yes. Whether that be a therapist, a certified coach, life coach, mindset coach, spiritual coach, definitely healers who have expertise in these areas, get the support. The second thing is consider alternative modalities of support. You know, a lot of times we are mired in a lot of traditional spaces, and you know, with what's happened with COVID, tradition is really being challenged right now on many levels, in cosmos levels, and you know, in mystic levels, and human day-to-day Western civilization levels, all this, you know. So if you were ever curious about meditation, while meditation is by no means new, it is incredibly ancient and been around forever, but it has never been really seen as a mainstream way of shifting and evolving and growing and developing. And so I think still in our mainstream is considered a more alternative method. You know, whether it is that you go to astrology, because astrology is another modality, it's a tool, it's not a religion, it's not, it's a tool. If it's you going to a life coach or a spiritual coach instead of maybe a traditional psychologist, or in addition, building that team where you have the traditional licensed social worker or licensed therapist along in that team with a spiritual healer. In other words, get curious about and consider other modalities that may be considered more alternative, but in fact, a lot of times have very ancient rooted spaces. Just consider it. The third thing is to get curious about your life and about your identities. When you're getting that support, when you're considering these alternative ways to begin to live a life and accept life in a different way, we have to first, yes, have awareness, and then we have to get curious. We have to start wondering about the life we have. We have to start wondering the things that are around us and the types of relationships we have and the types of places we find ourselves in. And then we have to start exploring our identities beyond race, beyond gender. What about language? What about geography? What about our housing story? Like, who owns land, or who are we? Do I come from a history? What's our ancestors? Do I come from a history of people who historically have always owned something or who have never? And what does that do to me now and how I plan my life and how I value money or not? What about my faith and that identity? What is that about for me? Is it one that I've chosen or one that was put upon me that I've just practiced and it's been, I think, working for me? Or has it? Getting curious, not changing, not fixing, not, letting go, not any of that. I'm just saying, get curious, ask some questions, sit in it, be thoughtful about it. And don't feel so compelled so quickly to make any move. It's just gonna think about it. And I think getting that support of a coach or a therapist can help you while you are getting curious about those things. The fourth thing is to review your purpose. What did you come here for? Why do you occupy space? What is it all about? What is, how is, why is, who is our purpose? And allow yourself not to have too much intellectual thought about it, not our roles, not what we can do, but who we are. Who we are. And allow your, I would say, soulful lens to come on that, spiritual lens. Look at, I always equate purpose to soul, not religion, not even so much the practices within. Allow yourself to you can hold your religion, you can hold your faith while still reviewing your soul and purpose. Those two can work together and in fact should, in my opinion. So be willing to put a little bit of that hat on of what do I believe? Why do I believe it? And what does it matter for me in my intentions in my life? And the last offering I will give is learning more about an abundant mindset and learning more about a scarcity mindset. I have found that when we are in the scarcity, meaning the I should have, I don't think I can, suppose this never, if I do this, I may not, I better go ahead and get it all because it might not. That's scarcity mindset. Thinking of the worst situation and plan B, C, D, E, F. Always. How do we reframe that into the abundant mindset of when this becomes, as I am growing, as I progress and practice, I am becoming, I am my greatest understanding. I release limitation to grab more and to be and to thrive. That's abundant mindset. When we have that challenge is what it is. And, not but, and it is often an opportunity in an incredibly subconscious, hidden way. And I believe when we put these 5 things together, we can, in fact, accept the life we didn't plan. Because these 5 things give us the foundation, give us the hope, give us the clarity, give us the reflection of, aha, maybe the life I planned wasn't actually the life I needed. Maybe the life I planned wasn't actually the life that was going to bring me to my biggest self. Maybe, in fact, the challenges, the woes, the losses, the difficulties, the back and forth, the disappointments, the anger, maybe that was all for me Yes, to get feedback so that I am able to move in the direction of a life that I didn't plan, but that potentially has way more to offer. And I'll say this as kind of my final to this, and then I'm gonna talk about an offering that I'm going to give to any one of you who would like, that is included in our show notes. But just understand that um, at this point of our lives after 40, if we can begin to understand that the universe, higher self, source, God, whatever you call it just wants the good stuff for you. It really does. And if we can release, yes, there are things that happen that are not good energetically. Some people refer to them as evil spirit or demon or bad or whatever. Whatever, if you want to give that, but understand that way more of what energetically is occurring is in our favor, and in wanting us to navigate the negative in order to, in fact, receive and experience the abundance. So if you can keep that as your lens, allow yourself to be disappointed, allow yourself to be mad and angry and hurt and sad. That's important, because that's the human experience. The soul, in fact, wants you to have that. It wants you to experience that because it wants evolution. It's feedback. It's feedback so that you can pivot and move through. So if you can begin to look at life in that more abundant mindset, review your purpose and your spiritual lens, get curious about your life as it is and your identities and how they intersect. Consider alternative ways that you may want to approach your life, and get support from a professional to help you along the way. I think your ability to accept the life you didn't plan may, in fact, be the one you really want. Okay. And the last thing I'll say, in our show notes, there is a link where you can grab for completely free. It's a mental health check-in sheet. It's a worksheet. And it's a PDF, so you can make as many copies as you want. You can print them off. You can take a picture of it and write a separate journal, just and use it as a prompt. If you want to write on it, do whatever you need. It's a mental health check-in. And it just provides a way for you just to kind of check in with self and begin that curious thing that I was talking about. That's what it does. And if you're watching the video, I think I can pull it up here because I have it. And there we go. So you have to come to the video. It's the thing I created. It's on my phone. It's not that exciting, but it's a very general thing, super easy for you to do. And I'm just offering it to you as a way for you to begin this journey if you haven't already. And if you're already on the journey, it's just another tool. And, it asks, how are you feeling? It has some photos so that sometimes we don't know I don't know what I'm feeling. And it gives some kind of facial circle, like smiley face, happy face, sad face, confused face. And you can kind of check it off that way if you don't know really how you want to articulate it. And then it asks some questions like, how can you improve your overall mental health? And what have you been doing? What's been your most dominant emotions, like the most prevalent, the ones that constantly kind of take over during the week? What are you feeling good about right now? And then what are some things that kind of trigger you and kind of create some negative emotions? And then just kind of rating your overall week. So it's just a way, you can do it weekly, daily, monthly, whatever, no rules. But if you look in the show notes, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can either go to the audio podcast and look in the show notes, or here on the YouTube description, you can see a link there. And then obviously our main link tree, which is scrolling on our YouTube video, link, that URL, it's available there. So I hope you grab it. It's totally free. I promise I'm not going to charge you later. You don't have to be a Patreon subscriber, although we still want you to join Patreon because you're not going to get these videos when we have our special guests and when they give their advice. But we would love for you to support the podcast so that we can continue to do these messaging. There's a lot involved, obviously, in producing a podcast, and your support is more than appreciated. So I hope this was some good food for thought. I hope you are inspired and motivated to continue to thrive and to continue to find your voice after 40, and not only find it, thrive at it, light it up, share it, motivate others. Let your woundedness heal others. Let that inform you so you can become healed in that space while also transforming others. So I hope you all have an amazing week. This has been fun to do, and I appreciate you for continuing to tune in to Finding Your Voice After 40. We'll be back next week. Thanks.